Church family, thanks for joining us for today's Daily Devotional. We're continuing to talk about how we can strengthen one another. And as we wrap up this week, kind of looking at that topic, we're going to talk about how that should have an effect in the church. So, we live in a world full of conflict. When the writer wrote this particular Devo today, he had no clue what would be going on in our world right now. But there is constant conflict. There's conflict over our pandemic. There's conflict over race relations. There's conflict over politics right now. It is continual conflict that we live in. And while it shouldn't, sometimes that conflict does make its way into the church. And Paul knew that as he was writing here to the church in Rome and really to all the churches who would be able to read this letter. Paul knew that sometimes conflict would exist in the church. And so that's why I believe he writes Romans chapter 14. You look here at verse 19 when he says, "So then let us pursue what promotes peace and what builds up one another." These two ideas, pursuing peace and then what builds up one another, kind of saying, hey, if it doesn't promote peace, if it doesn't build someone up, if it doesn't make them better, then we need to abandon it in the church. So does that mean that we should agree on everything in the church? That we should all kind of be this uniform, group of people who all have the same beliefs? Absolutely not. That's just not realistic. We're going to disagree with things, but how we disagree with things is important. We should be able to disagree with each other on certain topics, but still be unified. Not every disagreement has to be an argument. Not every disagreement also has to be divisive. We can disagree and still love one another. We can still disagree and build each other up and promote peace. And that should be our goal as the church. That as we walk through this world of conflict, and inevitably conflict begins to happen in our church, even in the midst of that conflict, even in the midst of disagreement, still pursuing peace and still building one another up. So our author gives us a couple of questions for us to look at. The first says, where do you see conflict in the world? And then the second question, how will you work to promote peace? I think the answer to that first one's very obvious. Where do you see conflict in the world? We've even briefly discussed a few of them now. But that second question, how are you going to promote peace? Only you can answer that question. Only you know how you can use your influence to promote peace here in this body, here in our church. And so I would really encourage you to spend some time with that question, figuring out what ways are you going to help be a peacemaker in our church and be a peacemaker in our community. And so, church family, as you're figuring that out, we want you to know that we love you and we're praying for you.